So we talked about how can I live a life that God promised so that I have more success in business. I want to be far more wealthier than I am. I want to have far better health. I want to have true love success. I want to have a powerful, purpose-driven life. What do I need to do in order to be able to have that kind of life? And let me just tell you in short, really, it takes bold action, right? Because one lady asked me, why is it that I can't do big things? She said, I want to do big things. I see other people do big things, but why is it that I can't do big things? And I told her, it's because you don't try to do big things. If you don't try to do big things, you're not going to be able to do big things. That's it. So we can't think this big things are just going to fall on us. But I'm going to share some things with you today that I believe will really enhance your journey and help you take it to the next level. Now, we're talking about living a life beyond limits, right? So here's the question. Let's define it, what it means. What does living a life without limits mean to you? I just need 3 or 4 people to unmute and tell me what they feel like it means for them. What is, if you were to live a life, you said, I'm living a life beyond limits. What does it look like to you? That's the question. Kathy, you unmuted, so you might as well talk.
Just planning for success, whether it's in the business, thinking as big as I can, because I think that my goals are at times too small. And I like to travel first class when I go overseas. I mean, that's not too big. I need to double my income. I need to take 3 roles or at least be good at one in my church. The sky is the limit of what God will do for me, but I have to take the first step. So that's what I think about when living a life beyond limits. Is whatever I dream I can achieve and more.
That's good. That's great. Fantastic. Okay, Benjamin, you unmuted. So do you want to say something?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for this opportunity to be here. It's a God thing because uh, I that's what I'm doing right now, and that's where I'm going, and I'm preparing myself right now for what you're saying, and I have prepared myself with some other things, and I got so many things going on. This is giving me confirmation to where I am going, so I'm happy to be ready to go where I'm going.
All right. Excellent. Thanks, Benjamin. Someone else wants to share, what is a life, if you came here to see hear a class about living a life beyond limits, what does that look like to you, to live a life beyond limits? Go ahead, Barbara.
Prosper for me, Kimberly.
Kimberly, I'm sorry. I thought that was Barbara. I'm muting. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, that's okay. For me, living life on purpose means prospering in every area of your life, nothing missing, nothing broken.
Okay, so I'm talking about living life beyond limits, so that you don't have any limits.
Yes, but
great. So
yes, but when you prosper in every area of your life, there is no limits.
Right.
From my point of view.
That's all I'm asking for, is your point of view. All right. So I think we can take one more. Did anybody else want to share?
Yes, Barbara.
Go ahead, Barbara.
I just wanted to say that life beyond limits for me is don't allow my mind to hold me back.
Right.
Don't allow all the doubts to come into my mind about what I can't do, what goals I can't reach.
Excellent.
And stop doubting what God can do in my life.
All right. That's living a life beyond limits. When you stop doubting, you have everything you need. There's no limits, that you take big, bold steps because you got the faith to do it and all of that. Yep. So you all did great. That is fantastic. So let me get back to this now. Okay. So when we talk about living a life beyond limits, here's the thing I want to share with you from the scriptures. This is from, it's in Genesis. And it says, I'm going to ask Valerie to help me read too, okay? But this one says, and the Lord said, behold, they are one unified people, and they have all have the same language. This is only the beginning of what they would do in rebellion against me. This is the Amplified Classical Version. And it said, and now no evil thing that they imagine they can do will be impossible for them. So when we read this in the Amplified Classical Version, it said, we know what God did. He went down and confounded their language, because he said, if they're able to continue to conversate, nothing's going to be impossible to them. They're going to be able to do anything they imagine to do. And to me, living a life beyond limits is being able to do anything I imagine to do. So getting myself to a place where I can just be free enough to imagine all kinds of things and see them happen, and not limit myself to a small box of opportunities, a small toolbox. To me, living a life beyond limits is not limiting myself to anything, but in everything, in every place, that I'm able to not just stand back and look at situations and hope they could be better, but I can make them better. Every situation, anywhere I am, that I can make it better. That's the way I see a life beyond limits. So we got to talk a little bit about that. Now, this is something most of you all have already seen. It says, when I embraced this one frame of thinking, my whole life changed. And here's how. I found deep and abiding love. I unlocked my greatest potential. I created unmatched wealth. I got my first Bentley and my first of 13 houses that I own. Then I won public endorsement. So, and also it changed the trajectory in my life. Things started to change in my life. And I just had one frame of thinking that I felt like I embraced that caused all of that. And it was gratitude. But today I want to share something else with you, because this is something I've said over and over again, that when you become grateful for everything you have, then you start opening yourself up for more opportunities. But as time has gone on, I realized that it was more than gratitude. It was gratitude and the fact that I believed I deserved it. I believed I deserved my husband. I deserved those houses. I deserved that Bentley. I deserved, to win office. I believed I deserved it. Now, for a lot of people, that's hard for them to do. They don't believe they deserve success. They think if God grant them with success, then that should be enough. But the word God gave me, he said, don't keep asking me, do I want you to have something? That I want you to have something that I've already told you I've given you. So he said, don't keep asking me that. So when I pray and ask for something to happen. And then when it starts happening, I'm like, God, is this what you want me to have? He said, don't do that, because you already prayed for it. I already promised it to you in the scriptures. Don't keep asking me that. Know that you deserve it because I've already given it to you. What do you all think about that? Somebody share. A couple of people share. What do you think about that? Feeling like you deserve the life you want to live.
Well,
That's hard for a lot of people I know. Go ahead, Benjamin.
This is exactly what God told me. God gave me something, and then God said, "Well, where's that thing I told you? Where is it? What did you do? You better go back and do it, because otherwise time is going to go by." So I went and says, "Okay, God, I'm going to do this because you told me." Mm-hmm. You're right, and I'm learning now. He already gave it, so I just need to act upon it, and the steps will start. It will snowball.
Yeah, that's the key. That is absolutely the key. You've got, like the lady who asked me, why can't I do big things? You can't do big things because you're not trying to do big things. You're not planning to do big things. Everything you think of that you want to do is small, and you're satisfied with that. And that's not enough for us to do what we're here for, to accomplish the goals that was given to us, our assignment, before we even got here on earth. So I got to hurry up now because time is 7:30 already. So as Einstein said, no problem can be solved from the same level of consciousness that created it. You cannot solve the problem from where you are. You got to go beyond where you are. You got to get to another level of consciousness. And that's what really impressed me when I got ready to do this conference that I did in Chicago. Every time I take a step toward the next conference or the next retreat or summit, and the next thing I'm going to do, by the way, the next thing we're going to do is go to Thailand, for those of you all that are interested. Okay, so we'll talk about that later. But anyway, every time I do that, new wisdom opens up to me. Why? Because I'm taking steps beyond what's normal, what average people do. And that's what he was showing me doing it before we had the conference. He began to show me a word that I'm going to share with you all today that helped me to understand the power behind everything I've been able to do in the past, and also the power behind the vision that he's given me for my future. And now this is powerful when you really think about it. But see, timing matters, because here we go here. This is in Daniel, the 12th chapter, in the 4th verse, Amplified Version. It said, but you, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Some things are not going to happen until it's time for them to happen, but that does not mean we don't walk toward those things for them to come to pass. They're not going to come to pass while we just sit there. Like Daniel, he told Daniel had fasted 21 days and 21 nights. God gave him a message. He said, but shut it up. Don't even tell people yet, but it's here. So you see what I'm saying? Daniel got the words he needed that he was seeking for because he took those steps. And if we don't take steps, we cannot get the thing that we're seeking for. We can't just wait and think that, oh, the grace of God is on me. God has given me promises. People die with promises every single day. So we have to take those steps. We have to take those steps. We cannot just step back and wait. Now, this thing you all have all seen, but this is the reason why it's hard for people to take a step.
Training fleas requires a glass jar with a lid. The fleas are placed inside the jar, and the lid is then sealed. They are left undisturbed for 3 days. Then, when the jar is opened, the fleas will not jump out. In fact, the fleas will never jump higher than the level set by the lid. Their behavior is now set for the rest of their lives. And when these fleas reproduce, their offspring will automatically follow their example.
This is the very reason why we don't take the next step. It's because we have been raised to stay inside of the jar. We've been raised to walk in line with everyone else. We've been raised to not think that we deserve things that we deserve. And I'm here to say you deserve it. And so you just got to take the steps that reveal that you deserve it, because everything is already set up. That jar, when we saw the jar, let's go back to it. When we saw the jar, training the fleas with the jar, then we saw that these fleas were always free. Only for a short time. For a short time, they weren't free, but then the lid was removed.
With a lid. The fleas are placed inside the jar, and the lid is then sealed. They are left undisturbed for 3 days. Then, when the jar is opened, the fleas will not jump out. In fact, the fleas will never jump higher than the level set by the lid. Their behavior is now set for the rest of their lives. And when these fleas reproduce, their offspring will automatically follow their example.
So when you think about it, the fleas are staying inside of the jar because that's what they've been trained to do. And we have been also, the structures in our life, the systems in our life have trained us only to take one step at a time, not to take those big, bold steps. And the only way we usually would take a big, bold step is if we're in trouble. But just think about if we were to take those big, bold steps while we're not in trouble, okay? Then we'll understand that that lid never existed, that jar never was holding us in, right? We was always able to take the next step, but we will only learn that if we take the step. And that's what I'm talking to you about, going to a place where we live the life that God promised, not waiting for it to happen. Like he told me, why are you waiting for me to tell you it's okay for you to have the things I promised you? Zelda, you are muted. Unmuted. Please mute yourself. Why are you waiting? He's saying this. And that's the question. For our knowledge is fragmentary, is incomplete and imperfect. This is in 1 Corinthians 13, chapter 9th verse in the Amplified Classical Version. For our knowledge is fragmentary, is incomplete and imperfect. And our prophecies, our teaching is fragmentary, incomplete and imperfect. And that is the very reason why we cannot have the things that we deserve, because we don't have the knowledge yet to understand how to take those steps. And that's why courses like this masterclass right now that I'm offering to you today for free, helps us to take that step. Now, I'm also going to offer a class that you pay for after this, okay? But you don't have to take that class unless you're ready to take the class, because that class is for people who are ready to really take some steps in their life, that are tired of being in the jar and also want to be around people who don't want to be in the jar and people who take big, bold steps. It says here, for our knowledge is fragmentary, is incomplete and imperfect, and our prophecy, our teaching is fragmentary, incomplete, and imperfect. And in fact, when Jesus was here, he said, there are things I want you to know that I can't tell you yet. Right? Paul said the same thing. I was caught up to the third heaven. I heard things I can't even utter out of my mouth. Moses said the same thing. So there are things that have been hidden from us, that continue to be hidden from us. And the only way we'll get them is by taking those bold steps. That's the only way. And that's what I learned more than any other thing when we were in Costa Rica, about that journey within, getting on the inside, going within to tap into that inner strength, that inner man, the power that resides within us. That's what I learned, how to tap into that and how to operate in it. Because I've been praying for 40 years, okay, over 40 years, but hardly would I take time to listen, right? Take time and meditate, visualize what I want to see happen. Hardly would I do that. I would pray and then that would be it, right? And then I go on about my day. But I learned down there about how to go within, and it was a beautiful journey. I want you to know, absolutely beautiful journey. And it was a transition for my life. It was like an advent, like something had come in and happened that was significantly different from anything I had experienced before. And here's Eckhart Tolle, for those of you that know him, he's a spiritual leader. He said, there's a shift happening in humanity right now. He said, it's a shift in consciousness. And it's happening now because it has to happen now. This thing has to happen now, because as Einstein said, we cannot solve our problem with the same level of consciousness that we had when we created it. So, but when the fullness of time comes, all of a sudden knowledge comes. And sometimes God will challenge you. He would tell you, take the step. And you're like, Lord, well, I need to get all my ducks in order. He's going to let you get your ducks in order. And as soon as you know what, you take the step, them ducks going to disappear, because that ain't how you get there. Okay? You get there by taking bold steps of faith. I hope y'all can hear me. Y'all hear me here? Can you all hear me?
Yes.
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 Yeah, I'm not just talking about by the sound of my voice. I'm talking about, can you hear this message that I'm speaking to you today?
I hear it.
All right. God is love, it says. 1 Corinthians 13, chapter 8, verse, an Amplified Classical Version. Love never fails. So God never fails. He never fades out or becomes obsolete or comes to an end. But it said, as for knowledge, get this, it's going to pass away. It's going to lose its value and be superseded by truth. So in other words, things that we know, we're going to find out that was only partial truth, and that there is more. I remember a time when I first got saved. This is like over 40 years ago, and I was so excited. And I went to a friend of mine, his mother, and I was telling her that I had gotten saved and God delivered me, and I was telling her everything. And she said, "Did you go to church today?" I said, "Yes, I went to church today. I'm going to church every time they open the doors." She said, "How's it you went to church and you don't have any stockings on?" She said, "You shouldn't go to church without stockings on." And I was like dumbfounded, because I had never heard that. Nobody had told me that before. But it just shows that our knowledge that we have will pass away, and it's going to lose its value. Another lady, I was in a conference And this lady stood up and said, she said, God was dealing with me because they was talking about putting away, they was putting away all these ordinances of man and hearing God. She said, there was a lady that came to my church and she was preaching and prophesying. And she was on point, but she said, I could not receive her because she had on pants. And she said, God rebuked her and said, hear her. Because what we were taught in the past, it's fading away. It's going away, and it's going to be superseded by truth. What you know you have in your bank account when you go to buy that house is things you know, but it's going to get superseded by the truth when you know it's time for you to get that house. You would say, I know what I got in my bank account, but I know it's time for me to get this house. So my knowledge is going to be superseded by truth. I'm about to let my knowledge be superseded by truth. And in your business, you got to let the knowledge that you have be superseded by the truth. What is the word of God saying for you? It doesn't matter what people know. It doesn't matter what people say. It doesn't matter about whether you can walk on water or not. When God says walk, you can walk, okay? That's the thing. And if you need to walk, you will walk. You got to take those bold steps, bold actions. This is what JFK asked. He asked this astrophysicist. He wanted to figure out how to get to the moon. This is in the 60s. He said, what will it take to get a man to the moon and back here safely to Earth? What will it take? Now, I want you to think about what it's going to take to get you to your moon. What will it take for you to get to your moon? What is the thing that you're trying to get to, the place you're trying to go, what you're trying to achieve that is far beyond your earthly surroundings? It's beyond anything place you've been. It's further than anywhere you've ever gone. It's going to require more than you've ever had to put out. What is your moon? I want you to know what it is. And the reason why I want you to know what it is because, like Bruce Lipton said, if you can't articulate it, you can't have it. When JFK asked this astrophysicist about this, he had the words to ask him. He didn't come there and say, I want to ask you a question, but I really don't really know exactly how I want to say. He said, no, what would it take to get a man to the moon and back? That was his question. How can I get a man to the moon and get him back safely? He asked the astrophysicist because the astrophysicist was learned in planets and dark holes and stars and all the atmosphere in the skies and the heavens. He was learned in those things. Those are things he studied. So he went to a person who had studied it and he said, tell me what it's going to take. Now, when he began to ask that question, I'm sure the fire was already burning inside of him, right? A fire had to be burning in him for him to even come to an astrophysicist and ask them something. How do I do something nobody has ever done before, and probably most people haven't even thought about? That's even possible. How do I do that? That was a fire burning in him. And you know what? When you have something to do, there is a fire burning in you. And you know what? All you need is the answer in order to take that next step. And the astrophysicist answered him. He didn't tell him about the kind of atmosphere that needs to be inside the capsule, or how to avoid black holes in heavens, or how to build a rocket made out of certain kinds of material. He told him one thing. He said, all you need is the will to do it. He said, that's all you need. It's the will to do it. And when you have the will to do it, you will do it. And nothing will stop you. Because of who you are. Because of the capacity that's in you. Because of that which is. All you need is the will to do it. That was the astrophysicist's response to President John F. Kennedy. Do you have the will to do it? Is this what you want? Is this what you need? Is this what you believe you can have? Do you believe you deserve to be able to do that? Do you have that in you? Do you have that in you? Do you have the will to do it? And that's my question to you. I'm going to share some things with you, okay? I mean, we're going beyond this, but I want to know if you could articulate it, and do you have the will to do it? Put it in the chat. Put it in the chat. Can you articulate it? And do you have the will to do it? Not how to do it, not the wherewithal to do it, not the capacity to do it, not the ability to do it, but the will. Do you have the will? Are you driven enough to say, I got to have this? I got to be able to live this life, and I got to get beyond these limits. Are you driven enough? Do you have the will to do it? Yeah, I love this. I love your answers. Yes and yes. All right, I deserve it. That's right, you deserve it. Why do you deserve it? Because, hello, Christ died for it. I said, Christ died for it. That's why you deserve it. It's not because of your goodness. It's not because you gave your all. Not because you felt like, oh, you know what? I deserve it because I was a good person. I did something for something. No, you don't deserve it for any of those reasons. You deserve it because Christ died so he could redeem us, so we could get our power back. So the will to do it is the most important thing here, and the time is now. This is what he said in Daniel 12:4, right after he told him to seal the book. The next verse, it said, then many shall run to and fro and search anxiously through the book. They're talking about through the Bible. And the knowledge of God's purposes as revealed by his prophets shall be increased and become great. He said, when people are going to begin to search, because they're going to know inside that there is something for them, there is a way, and they're going to begin to search anxiously through the Bible, and the knowledge of God's purposes as revealed by his prophets shall be increased and become great. And that means that people will increase and people will become great. Why? Because the time is now. Big challenges, impossible feats needs bigger power than you've ever had before. Not the biggest power that exists, but bigger power than you've ever had before, because you're facing big challenges. If you're going to take those bold steps, you will face big challenges. You will come face to face with things that seem impossible. But you got to understand that when you take those steps, the power to be able to answer those challenges that are before you is already waiting to show up in you. It's already waiting to show up. I remember when I was running for mayor of the city of Chicago, and I was scared to death. I ran because God let me know he wanted me to run. My pastor was supporting me. My family was supporting me, but I was scared to death. I was just scared they're going to put a microphone in my face. And I'm going to say, blah, 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 blah. I'm not going to know what to do. I couldn't explain why I was running. I couldn't tell people God told me to run. I had to tell them, that we need to bring the voice of ordinary people into government. That's what I was saying. But I knew that wouldn't be enough for me to run. God had to tell me. He did tell me. And yet I was scared. And so he dealt with me. He said, if you have run with the footmen and they have wearied you, that's in Jeremiah 12:5. He said, if you have run with the footmen and they have wearied you, how can you contend with horses? He said, how can you contend with horses? He said, I got something for you to do, and it's beyond these footmen. It's to live a life beyond limits. And that means you're going to face big challenges, impossible feats, but it just means that you're going to receive a bigger power, more authority, more insight, more consciousness. You're going to receive what you need. Every step I've taken has opened the door to a greater knowledge, a greater power. And that's why I'm here today. The Bible said, how can they hear without a preacher? And how can they preach except they be sent? And I want you to know I am sent. I didn't just go. I am sent to help people take that next step in their life. We got walls blocking business success. We got systems that thwart true love relationships. When it could be true love, there's systems there that's breaking it up, keeping it from happening. Walls blocking business success. Truth hidden about our health. You think they don't know how how we can get healed? They know how we can get healed, but they don't make enough money on healing people. They need people to be sick until the day they die. So we got truth hidden about our health. Systems thwart our true love relationships. Walls blocking our business success. It should be there, but we got these things breaking it. But we know it's time to transcend limits like the children of Israel did when they faced the Red Sea. When they came face to face with the Red Sea, that sea didn't open until they got there, until they start walking toward it. That's when the Red Sea opened up. We got to dismantle barriers, just like the Jericho wall was keeping the children of Israel from going into the promised land. Those walls fell down. Do you hear me? But it fell down once they went toward the walls. We got to overcome giants, just like David did with Goliath. Goliath didn't just fall, David charged him. David charged Goliath. He didn't wait for Goliath to chase him around till he got tired. He chased him. He went after him. He said, "You coming down because you have defied the name of the Most High God." He said, "You're coming down." It's time for us to transcend limits, dismantle barriers, overcome giants so we can get the business success that we know we're supposed to have. You ain't working this hard and getting this little bit of success and thinking that's enough. You know it's not enough. You know it's not enough. You're not waiting around all this time trying to find true love and nobody's showing up. Everybody look tore off from the flow up. You know? No. We got to transcend these limits. We got to remove these barriers and overcome these giants. And in order to do that, it's some steps we got to take. And number one, we got to expand our consciousness. Our consciousness got to expand. We got to open our mind up and see there is far more here than I'm seeing. Okay? It's far more here than I'm seeing. I remember when I was asking God about getting married, and I was 58 years old, and I was like, "Lord, why I'm not married? And why none of these women are married? All of us been fasting, praying, and laying our life down, giving our all. Why we're not married? What's going on?" You know? And I said, "Well, Lord, you know what? I'm going to worship you to the day I die. The last word that's going to come out of my mouth, Lord, let it be hallelujah. Let that be my last word, the last breath, because I want to glorify you to the day I die." I said, "But when I get there face to face, I got a question for you. And that is why we didn't marry. Why is it that we waited and never got married?" And you know what he told me? He said, "I've given you everything that pertains to life and godliness. So if you don't get it, it's because of your lack of faith. It has nothing to do with me." Man, he didn't have to tell me that but one time. Okay? That was it. Because he let me know I've already given you that. And the only reason you don't have it is because of your lack of faith. I accepted that. I didn't get mad and say, "No, I got faith. I got a whole lot of faith. I got faith and I did this. I didn't do that." I said, "I got you." That's what I told God. I said, "You ain't gonna never have to tell me that. Because you know what? I'm getting married." And that's it. And you know what? Within a year, I was married. And not to anybody, but to a man that loves my presence. He loves my presence. And I love his presence. And we do everything we can to support each other, to build each other up, to help each other. We don't argue. If one of us is weak, the other one is going to be strong. If one of us is strong, the other one tries to become stronger. That's what we do because we recognize that we have something here that God gave us. Both of us were looking for the same thing and we found each other. That's what happened. So when my consciousness expanded to understand that I wasn't waiting on God to send me a husband, he was waiting on me to use my faith to get the things that I wanted. So he let me know, you're not waiting on me, you know, and that's what he's saying now. And that's why this word that he gave me, I was just resting and I was preparing for the conference in Chicago in Hyde Park. And he began to speak to me as I was meditating. And he gave me the word par. And I said, "Par, okay, so I know par, means to be at the level you should be at, right?" He said, because if a golfer is golfing, he at least should be at par if he's a first class golfer, because everybody else can be way above par, it doesn't matter. So, okay, but the first class golfer, we expect him to be at least at par because he's a first class golfer. And so then he said, gave me the word beyond, par, beyond. And I started thinking about it, par, beyond, par, beyond. I said, now, beyond par? Nobody wants to be beyond par. People want to be below par. Nobody wants to be above par and definitely don't want to be beyond par. And he let me know, he said, no, what I'm saying is that what I put in you is beyond anything that anybody can consider as excellent, great, fantastic, wonderful. He said, it is beyond par. We can't even, it's not even in the same category. So he gave me this word, paryon. And so I pronounced it paryon. And I want everybody to say it. You don't have to unmute yourself, but say paryon, paryon. That's how I pronounce it, paryon. I could pronounce it any way I wanted to, but I could say paryon or yon par or whatever, but this is the way I pronounce it, paryon. And when I was thinking about it as the days were getting closer to the conference, I was trying to say, am I introducing this word at the conference? And I was like, well, Lord, I don't know. I just, I'm not sure. I understand what you're saying, what the word means. It's beyond par, that it supersedes anything that we know to be normal. And he said it's in us, but I still didn't have a full definition of it. But I had to make the decision that I was going to embrace it. And it came back to me about that scripture in Jeremiah 12:5. If you have run with the footmen and they have wearied you, how can you contend with horses? And he said, if I can't trust you with a word, how can I trust you with nations? If I give you a word just because you never heard it before, and I can't trust you to speak that word, how can I trust you with nations? That's what he was saying to me. So Paryon means, the Paryon is the sacred force of divine intention that has always resided within us. It's God's divine intention. That's why when the children of Israel walked up to that Red Sea, the sacred force of divine intention opened that water up and lifted it up on two sides, because nothing was going to be able to stop the children of Israel from coming out of Egypt. Okay? Once they made the decision, they was coming out. Nothing was going to stop them. Okay? Nothing was going to stop. Divine intention. Same thing with the Jericho walls. God had told them to conquer that land. The walls were thick and they were up there. There was no way for them to penetrate those walls. So those walls had to fall flat. And how did they fall flat? By the force of divine intention. When God intends something to happen, he will lay those walls flat. He will open that Red Sea. He will give you the courage to run toward a giant and not away from him. The Paryon is the sacred force of divine intention that has always resided within us. Now, I want everybody to read that. We don't have to unmute, but let's read it together. The Paryon is the sacred force of divine intention that has always resided within us. And there's more. It enables us to know God. Without divine intention, we would never be able to know God. God intended for us to know him. And he did what he needed to do for us to come to understanding that he was real. Right? That was the force of divine intention. The Paryon is the sacred force of divine intention that has always resided within us. It enables us to know God, but that's not all. Also, it teaches us how to rise above the imposed limitations of humanity. You remember those fleas in the jar? That limitation was imposed upon them, made them think that's all they could do, and that's as far as they could go. So it teaches us how to rise above the imposed limitations of humanity. Now, I want everybody to read it. We're talking about the Paryon. Let's read it together. It teaches us how to rise above the imposed limitations of humanity. So that the limitations that have been imposed upon humanity is not imposed upon us, because we go beyond that. And it directs us to take on our inherent role as the offspring of God in accordance with the divine purpose of our existence. It directs us to take on our inherent role as the offspring of God. It tells us we are the offspring of God, and according to God's divine purpose of our existence, we got to start walking in that role. Now, I want everybody to read it with me. And directs us to take on our inherent role as the offspring of God in accordance with the divine purpose of our existence. We exist for a divine purpose. We didn't just show up here, okay? We didn't just show up here. We exist for a divine purpose. Now, we're in another phase. Remember I told you when I was in Costa Rica, I felt that transition happen? There was something happened on the inside of us. I tell you, our consciousness was expanded, and all of a sudden we could see and hear things and do things we couldn't do before. That's what this is all about. And the way forward is here, Hebrews 6:1. Because this is going to, for some of you all, you're probably going to have to think twice about what I'm about to share with you, okay? But it's all scriptural, okay? It says, therefore, leaving the principles of the doctrine of Christ, let us go on unto perfection. That's Hebrews 6:1. Now, it's saying the only way we can go into perfection is to leave the principles of the doctrine of Christ. And he's not talking about leaving the principles of the word of God. He's talking about like laying on of hands and repentance from dead works and baptisms and all that. Have you been baptized in Jesus' name? Did they lay hands on you? And you can't be healed unless they lay hands on you. All that stuff is in the past because we got to go beyond that in order to go into perfection. All right? That's what it's saying. Now, when we think about the Paryon, there's something called the Paryonic Imperative. That means that there is something calling us to this level. It's within us, and it's something calling us to reach higher than we've ever reached before, to go deeper than we've ever gone before, to believe more than we've ever believed before. There's an imperative that we do this in this hour, and that's why we feel the pressure of the challenge calling us. Now, we can go back quietly to our place and sit down and just do what we've been doing and just hope that something happens for us, or we can be like the wise virgins. Get enough oil to be there when he calls you, okay? Get enough oil. That's what the class is about. Getting enough oil, to have enough wherewithal to be able to walk in the spaces you're called to walk in. So you are here. This is where we are. I'm about to close in a few minutes. You are here. You're here with me, and you're hearing this. And you got to define yourself about who you're going to define yourself to be. Who am I going to be? How am I going to live a life beyond limits? How am I going to get the things that I know I deserve? How will that happen unless I take bold steps? Now, you ready for a bold step? Let's go. Did he not say, let us make man in our image? Did he not say that in Genesis 1:26? He said, I made man in my image. Can y'all hear me out there? Mighty silent.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, we hear you, Dr. Pat.
Oh, yes,
Yes, we
loud and
do.
clear.
Yes.
Okay. What does that say, Kim? Kim?
Let us make man, Kim Smith, right? Let us make man in our image. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Keep going.
After our likenesses, and let them have dominion over all the heaven and earth.
Yeah, he said, and let them have,
Genesis 1,
it's 26 and 28.
dominion.
Yeah, dominion over all
26
the
and 28. Let us all the earth. Yes.
and let them have dominion over all the earth. He said, let us make man in our
All
image
the earth.
and
Make
after our
man.
and let them have dominion
All
over
likenesses.
the earth. That's what he said, right?
Yes. Yes, he does.
And then he said, what?
Dearly beloved, you are now the sons of God. First John chapter 3, verse 2, in the King James Version.
says, dearly beloved, we are now the sons of God. How many of y'all believe this is true? When God said, let us make man in our image. I want you to put it in the chat.
I believe it.
If you believe it, put it in
I
the chat.
believe it.
That he said, let us make man in our image, and that he made us in his image. What about after our likeness, and let them have dominion over all the earth? How many of y'all believe that he made us after his likeness and then instructed us to have dominion over all the earth? Just say, I believe it, or yes. Either way, put it in the chat, because I want to hear you say this thing. I want to hear you say this is true. I want you to believe this, to say that you believe it. I want you to utter that out of your mouth. I believe it. I want you to say, I believe it. I believe it. Okay? Go ahead.
I believe it. That's all. I couldn't figure out how to get to the chat. So I wanted to make sure I said it.
That's good, Bettina. It says, dearly beloved, now we are now the sons of God. It's not later, it is now. Do you believe that, Bettina?
I believe that.
All right. Then it goes on in Acts, the 17th chapter, the 29th verse. And it says, for as much then as we, go ahead, Kim.
For as much then as we are the offspring of God, Acts 17, verse 29, in the King James Version.
I believe we're the offspring of God. We made in his image. We made in his likeness.
I believe that.
We're instructed to have dominion over all the earth. And he said, we are now the sons of God. For as much then as we are the offspring of God. It says, and all of you are children of the Most High. And I have said, you are God. Psalms 82 and 6. But who do you say you are? He said, thank you, Kim. He said, I have said, you are God. And all of you are children of the Most High. But who do you say you are? Because what you say matters. What you believe matters. If we're made in the image of God, if we're made in the image of God, if we're made after the likeness of God, if we have been given dominion over all the earth, if he said, now we are the sons of God, we are the offspring of God, and he said, I have said, you are God's. Psalms 82 and 6, and all of you are children of the Most High. But who do you say you are? Because what you say matters. What you say matters. For as much then as we are the offspring of God, and all of you are children of the Most High, and I've said you are God's, your thoughts matter. What you think matters. What you say matters. Because what you think is what keeps you in the same place over and over again, even though there's no cap on the jar. Your thoughts matter. Your words matter. Your imagination matters. The things that you think about matter, and they put you either in the jar or outside the jar. Your words put you in the jar or outside the jar. Your imagination puts you in the jar or outside of the jar. And it's time for us to realize that we got to get out the jar in order to fulfill our assignment for being here on this earth. We didn't come here just to grow up and go to school and get a job and get married and have kids and die. We came here for a purpose. And it's time for us to step into that purpose. You're here. You are right here. And the Paryonic that God showed me, we got to be so far beyond that it's not even in the same vocabulary. Beyond par. That is the dynamic force. The Paryonic is the sacred force. Read with me. The Paryonic is the sacred force of divine intention that has always resided within us. It enables us to know God, and it teaches us how to rise above the limitations of humanity. And it directs us to take on our inherent role as the offspring of God in accordance with the divine purpose of our existence. God he had intentions when he put us on earth, when he sent us here. We came to our mother's womb, but he said, before you were even in the womb, I knew you. He said, before you came out of the womb, I had already separated you, sanctified you, and said, you're going to speak for me. And that means we have to allow the Paryonic to operate within us. We can shut it down. It's there, but we can shut it down. And we can stay within the limitations of humanity. We can step outside of our inherent role and become something other than the sons of God, in the image of God, the offspring of God. We can be something else. We can be black and female on the west side of Chicago. We can be whatever we decide we're going to be, and that we can limit ourselves by whatever humanity hands out to us. Stay in that jar, even though there's no cap, even though there's no jar. We can do all of that, or we can embrace the Paryonic power that's within us. And that's what this is all about. It's about stepping into that place where the Paryonic is the sacred force of divine intention that has always resided within us and enables us to know God. It teaches us how to rise above the limitations of humanity and directs us to take our inherent role as the offspring of God in accordance with divine purpose of our existence. Now, I didn't have none of this when God gave me the word. And until I told him I was willing to say the word, to use the word, that's when he started giving me exactly what it was. I mean, it was not manifested to me yet. And during the conference, I was even inviting the ladies and the guys that were in the conference to help me put this into the right frame of thinking, the right frame of speaking, because it was just that new. But it's not going to stay new. It's going to sweep the world, because it's time for this to happen. It says, therefore, be imitators of God. He said, imitate him as beloved children and walk in love. For all of you are children of the Most High, and I have said you're God's. But what you say matters. What you say matters.